So for that church where they are very much conforming God to their image, or at least attempting to, because you really can't. You have no ability. I mean, that's the sad part. You just think you are, but it's not really working out for you. But for that church where they are foregoing clothes, let's say, that we did spare you the video from, and thank you so much, Jeff, for making that into an audio clip. I just wonder if they've thought about, like the logistics of that are just embarrassing and mortifying. And what about, people who might happen into a church, because I've done that before. I'm out of town and I'm looking for a church on a Sunday. Like, you don't want to accidentally go into that church. Oh, gosh. People are so, if you don't know it's end times, like you're hiding in a cave, right? I'm Dr. Gina, standing in for Brian Fisher today on Focal Point, and I'm happy to be with you. Those people at that church better be careful, because it's cold out there. And, clip 2, Jeff.
When the days are shorter and literally the light exposure is less. The thinking is that somehow by changing these rhythms and decreasing the amount of light we're exposed to during a day, you can actually affect the brain chemistry in such a way that mood disturbances develop. As you move away from the equator and the days get shorter and shorter, you tend to see more of this problem. In this country, it affects about 5%, somewhere between 4 and 6% of people. Important thing to remember is do not diagnose yourself. You may notice these patterns. It may just be sort of the winter blues, but it may also be a true seasonal affective disorder, which requires treatment. Sometimes the usual antidepressant medications are deployed. Sometimes it's just literally light therapy. Exposing people to a certain amount of ultraviolet light seems to correct this light deficiency that is somewhat thought to be responsible for seasonal affective disorder.
See, I think that's what happened to these people. Don't you agree? I mean, something is wrong. There's a screw loose, definitely. And I think I'm going to blame seasonal affective disorder. I thought it was interesting that this year is a particularly bad year. Of course, I live in California. That's not happening here. But I do remember living in Missouri and those long winters and feeling that emotionally. So people do need to be careful and not get crazy. I think it's fascinating what is in the news these days. And one of the other fascinating health points that I came across this week is regarding mammograms. I wasn't sure if you heard this, but I'm one of these people that's very, I was raised by doctors in the traditional medical model, but I've become very skeptical, I guess, as I've watched sort of the big pharma lobby along with the American Medical Association lobby be very corrupt lobbies when my husband was in the Senate in Missouri. And so I've become a little skeptical of the sort of typical or conventional advice given to us these days by Western medicine, especially considering that the American Medical Association, who makes most of these edicts for their people, also endorsed Obamacare. So this is the latest regarding mammograms. Clip 6.
Story is headline news today. A new study questions the value of mammograms to screen women for breast cancer. There is a lot of confusion and frustration about this report, which first appeared yesterday in the British Medical Journal. So we asked our Dr. John LaPook to look into it.
Almost 90,000 Canadian women ages 40 to 59 were screened over a 5-year period. Researchers found no difference in deaths from breast cancer between women who got mammograms and those who didn't. The women were followed for up to 25 years. In addition, 22% of the cancers found by mammography were considered unlikely to ever cause death.
Okay, just like that.
In recent years, controversy over the value of mammograms has led to confusion among both patients and physicians. In 2009, a major independent task force said women could consider waiting until age 50 for their first mammogram. The previous recommendation was 40. It also said women 50 to 74 should get mammograms every 2 years.
Very interesting, because, of course, every time you do this, you are exposing yourself to certain levels of radiation, and that could, of course, lead to more problems. So I just wanted to keep you knowing about this on the inside of the information as it breaks in health. It was something I always enjoy doing on my show, because I do think that we need to be skeptical. We need to be our own best advocates out there with our health these days. I want to go back to your calls now. 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840. Your thoughts on pretty much anything we've discussed in the show. We're going to go to Dennis calling from Jackson, Mississippi. Welcome to Focal Point, Dennis.
Hey, Dr. Gina. Glad to talk to you.
Me too.
I've got two little points. They're right that it's got to start in the church. We got too many churches that are trying to conform to the world instead of getting out there and teaching what the real word says. And I like the Black Robe Regiment. I've talked about on my Facebook and stuff before.
Awesome.
And that's some of the stuff that we need to get back to.
Yeah, it absolutely
And,
is.
I like what Dan Celia always says, too. We've already got term limits, and that's the voting booth.
That's my hesitation, Dennis. You make such an important point, and that's always been my beef with term limits, is that it does take away the rights of Ted Cruz or a Rand Paul or, some of the good guys to stay there. And the real problem is that we, with the vote, don't use it.
So that's exactly right. I mean, when you got something, we've got to start holding them accountable. People have to start getting informed on what's going on.
And therein lies the debate. Yeah, you make such a great point, Dennis, and I'm so glad you called. I hope you'll reach out to me on Facebook. I'd like to be your friend there. I do want to comment on this because watching, I explained briefly, but I want to say again, watching term limits take place, transform Missouri politics really from a more representative form of government where people had the vote, even if they weren't using it to get the guys out, the bad guys out. They had that vote. I watched, and in fact, I campaigned, so I'm just a big hypocrite on this, and I always want to point that out. I watched term limits happen in Missouri. I campaigned for term limits to happen. I stood in 100-degree blacktop heat campaigning for term limits, and then I watched it come along, and I watched it take out the bad guys. Yes, I did, but I watched it throw the baby out with the bathwater because all of a sudden now what happened was the new guys coming in were green, didn't know what the heck they were doing, and their staffers did know, and the consultants did know. And all that suddenly instead of worrying about their next election, where they were pretty safe, most of them, what they were worried about, the electeds were worried about, was the next job they were going to get. So they were compromising more votes to get jobs, right, with big companies, whatever, banks, whatever. Their staffers were really running their offices, and truly the staffers were operating in the capacity of the state representative or senator. And worse, the consultants were controlling the elections and the offices and the staffers and the power and the votes and the lobbyists. It was a very, very horrible situation. I watched it in Missouri, and I worry if we were to implement that on the federal level. The real issue, I think, again, goes back to the churches. If 60% of Christians voted in the next election, we couldn't lose. You can't argue with those numbers. We don't need term limits. We need to get out of the church pews and into the election booths on Election Day. Sean calling from Tyler, Texas. Sean, welcome to Focal Point. Do we have Sean?
Yes, hello.
Hello. Go ahead, Sean. What's your thought?
Well, my thought is talking about free speech and everything. Last year we saw at least a third of the country move to same-sex marriage. And talking about voters and everything, I think a lot of people voting against this, but a judge comes along and imposes it. Like Obamacare has been opposed on everybody. Mm-hmm. Talking about free speech, and people get, how long before it's made true law that speaking out against homosexuality, like that controversy with Phil Robertson on Duck Dynasty, and people are charged with hate speech? How long before preachers can't even speak against it?
Oh, I think not long. Not long if churches don't get vocal. Not long if churches don't start voting. Not long if churches don't start supporting candidates. Not long if pastors don't start preaching the truth from the pulpit and not being so afraid of losing their silly tax-exempt status. Let me tell you the church I'm going to go to. It's the one who, instead of putting some nilly-milly quote out in front of their church on their little banner or their little billboard, they put, "I don't care about my stupid tax-exempt status." This church is going to speak the truth from the pulpit. That's the church I want to go to. And I would argue that most bona fide Christians, that's the church they want to go to too. And I think you are absolutely straight. And this is the other thing. Don't you let them for 1 minute tell you that there is a difference between, there is no difference. There is no extracting social issues from fiscal issues. Don't you let any politician shove that down your throat. Name a social issue that doesn't have a fiscal impact. Name one. Name one. I don't care. Take the most controversial issue out there. Take gay marriage, take abortion. Let's take those two. Well, okay, taxpayers pay $1 million a day to fund abortions through Planned Parenthood. How is that not a fiscal issue? Go ahead and explain that to me, somebody. Oh, homosexual marriage, you want to take that one? Okay. Have you seen the fiscal impact on businesses for homosexual marriage? Listen, I don't care what you do in your bedroom. And hasn't that always been what everyone has said? Stay out of our bedroom. All right. Let's stay out of it. Let's not talk about it because it shouldn't be an issue in the workplace. And it shouldn't be an issue that we have to have shoved down our throat when we watch the Olympics or football. And it shouldn't be an issue that we're told is somehow a social issue when there's massive fiscal impact. So yeah, Sean, I completely agree. Tell us, I think it is. Oh, I wanted to go to one more call, but I just ran out of time. I'm so sorry. All right, tell us. This is what you can do. You can Facebook me. You can tweet me. I want to talk to you. I want to hear your comment. I cannot tell you what a joy it has been today to be with you. I love this show. I love this audience. And you are very blessed, my friends, to have AFR Radio out there fighting the good fight for you, defining the narrative every day. And your hosts at AFR are some of the very best in the business. Thank you so much to Brian Fisher and his amazing staff, the Reed family, and all the rest of them there in Tupelo for letting me fill in today. Thank you to my producer, Jason, here on this side in California. Find me on Facebook and Twitter. drginashow.com is the web address. I hope to join you again very soon. Until then, you go boldly now and you live the truth. God bless you.